You guys want to introduce yourself, Austen and Eric, and then take it away. I'm going to stop the screen share, and then you guys can. Floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Austen, you want to go?
Okay, I'll go first. So, hello, I'm Austen. I'm a web developer at UCSF. We are part of Central IT, which means that we do a lot of big projects, including UCSF.edu, IT website. Personally manage a lot of the sites with the Department of Medicine. And Eric?
Yeah, I work with Austen at UCSF, and we do manage over 1,000 Drupal websites. Some of those websites are kind of like a starter kit type thing, where it's basically a cookie cutter profile that we built for Drupal, and then people can kind of put in their own content and create blogs or whatever they need to do for their own department. And then we also host a lot of custom websites that are Drupal based. Some of them are still Drupal 7, obviously, and a bunch of them are now Drupal 8, soon to be Drupal 9, hopefully, without too much effort. But we haven't started that process yet. So in anticipation of further work and the complexities of our projects getting more and more complex, we've started to kind of build out our DevOps process. So I will start my screen share here. So yeah, we already did introduction, so I'll just skip past that. So why DevOps? Obviously, we are kind of building DevOps at UCSF to make it easier to develop, and that gives us, faster delivery, and it aims to make things more efficient for us. Part of that process is doing a lot of automated testing. So by including testing in our process, obviously we get faster feedback on things that break, and that makes it easier to issue and come out of that. And then ideally, you're going to get improved customer experience and customer satisfaction, because things don't end up broken in the production process. So this is the agenda for the meeting. Basically, I'm going to go over the existing process, talk about the processes and the tooling that we used, and then Austen's going to take over and talk about our workflow process that we developed, and then some of the tooling tests, and then we'll have a little bit of time for QA. So right now, both in our custom UCSF P1 route and our D8 route, we have kind of an ad hoc process. Most developers are basically just committing to the main branch. They do their daily changes, and those daily changes, there's a deployment schedule. And that deployment schedule is basically like 24 hours from the day you've committed to the next day. So you do a commit at 3 o'clock on one day, it shows up 5 o'clock basically the day after that. So there is some basically issues with that process, as all that stuff ends up on dev, and ideally nothing breaks. And the day after that, essentially, hopefully that stuff is live and there's no issues. But because of everyone's working on the same doc route, it's a large multi-site. Typically, we have at least 100 websites per doc route. There is a potential for commit conflicts, especially with modules that are shared across websites. There can be issues with the module being problematic or module updates being problematic. So there is definitely what would you say, like a tendency for things that could break in production. So we're trying to get away from that, obviously, to prevent it from going kaboom. My animations are kind of not working. So now I want to talk about our kind of improved process, and we're kind of still working through this process. There's a lot of things that we don't have in place yet, and that has to do with a lot of the multi-site support. And we do plan on supporting that eventually, but right now we're doing it kind of on a site that doesn't actually require multi-site. So the new processes, obviously you're going to commit to a feature branch, and then that feature branch will trigger a GitHub action. The GitHub actions will actually run our unit tests, our source code checkers, and then we have Cypress Io testing, which is, I don't know if you guys have heard of Cypress Io, but it's kind of like a front end JavaScript tool that allows you to basically write your tests in the browser. It's very nice. It's a lot more fluid than I can't even remember the old tool now. What's it called?
Selenium.
Selenium, yes, Selenium. Yeah, I mean it's
So
way
old, I
better
forgot
than
the name.
it's way better than Selenium. And so it just runs your tests internally, and then if everything goes well, then those tests will get pushed out to a Tugboat CI environment. Tugboat CI is kind of like a deployment approvals environment. You can also run tests there, but we're using it as kind of a sign off for clients to confirm that the changes that we made are what they asked for. And then because we're in Acquia, we also have another deployment environment, which is called a staging deployment. And those staging deployments are typically either a dev environment, or they can actually be a Acquia CI environment as well, where you can do further testing if you needed to for whatever reason. So if all this is good, we move to the next step, and that's the build artifact. I don't know what happened to my animation there. And then that build artifact is approved and everything goes out to production. So this is our new process. Again, we're kind of working on it still. But ideally, there's a continual loop between this first step here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. But all these tests, if they fail, they come back to the developer commit, and then it runs again in GitHub Actions and keeps going until everything is hunky-dory. This is just kind of another review of it. So the ideal workflow from kind of a administration standpoint is we work in Jira. All of our tickets are in Jira. We kind of do a Kanban board. So we get a ticket, we basically make a branch, we fix the branch, we do a git commit. Actually, we do like a pull request to the dev branch, and then GitHub will do its test runs, and then we do those deployments to Tugboat CI, and then once everything is okay, then the merge request can be approved and everything can go out to production. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about tooling. This is kind of a quote here: practice the philosophy of continuous improvements, get a little bit better every single day. So we're hoping to get there. I don't think we're there yet. We're still working on some test issues. We'd like to get our testing kind of more solid. And then, like I said, multi-site is the next big step. So when we started this whole process, we had a lot of questions about different platforms, like should we use Circle CI? Should we use Jenkins? Should we use Tugboat? Should we use Acquia's own solution? And so we went through this evaluation process, and that evaluation process kind of led us to decide on GitHub Enterprise. There are a lot of other developers at UCSF, and those developers do not necessarily work on Drupal. They may be like Rails developers or Python developers. So we needed a really flexible environment. The other thing that we do is because we are a medical institution, we have a lot of security concerns around HIPAA, FIRMA, etc. So the GitHub Enterprise allows us to build a solution on premise. And by doing it on premise, we also have our own SSO options, and we do our own hosting. So we can really lock things down. The other benefit to this is that we also receive the enterprise cloud option. So we have a kind of a bundle where we have GitHub Enterprise, which is the on-prem version, and then we have GitHub Cloud, which is basically just the version that you're used to, the version that's online. And this allows us to basically use kind of the more advanced tooling that GitHub has available. Now, GitHub Actions will be available in the enterprise solution very soon, if not already. So it will be a solution for everyone. But at the time that we started this project, it wasn't yet available for the enterprise version. But we could get it on Enterprise Cloud. So, and since we're building Drupal websites, there isn't a whole need for the HIPAA and FIRMA stuff because we're not typically we should not be hosting any of that data on Drupal. We're kind of discouraging people from doing that anyways. So that's not really a requirement in that perspective. I think I missed the topic here. Hold on. I wanted to say that like GitHub Actions is very similar to like build processes and other tools. Like if you're familiar with Jenkins or Circle CI, it basically allows you to basically build the environment, build the machine, and then from the machine, you can set up your web server or whatever application development tools you're using, and then go through that development process. So, and that allows you to run your tests and do whatever other build processes you need to do. From a development preview perspective, there were a couple choices. So what a development preview really is for is you say you have a design change and you want to show that to the client, but the design change is in the branch that you're working on. It's not necessarily available yet in a server for them to review. Well, the unfortunate thing right now with GitHub Actions is they don't provide a previewable environment. So we had to kind of look around and look for another option in terms of doing development previews. One of those options was Probo CI. The other option was Tugboat. There are a couple other tools out there, but because of Drupal and the way things work there, we were looking for something that was really Drupal friendly. So we chose Tugboat CI. And the nice thing about it is you can do development previews. You can also do CI work. So all the stuff that you can pretty much do on GitHub CI, you can also do on Tugboat CI. And then the other cool part about Tugboat CI is the visual regression testing. And that's a really cool thing that you can do inside of the app. You can specify exactly like what pages you want to preview, and then it'll actually take screenshots of those pages and compare them to the last build. So it's a really cool tool. So like I said, it's similar to GitHub Actions. One of the main reasons why we chose it, obviously, we're a cost-conscious company since we're a nonprofit, a school. It had better pricing than some of the competitors. It's made by a longtime Drupal consultancy, Lulubot. They offer a Slack support channel, which is really nice. We can talk to them in person and ask a lot of questions. They also had a wider variety of images, server images. I don't know if you're familiar with that, is like on GitHub Enterprise as well, you can basically say, I need this type of server. I need a Ubuntu server running these things. And so the fact that there were more server images available than some of the other competitors was a reason we chose it. And then again, the visual regressing testing is pretty cool. So if you're familiar with Cypress CI, it's kind of a best in breed testing tool. You can do unit testing, end-to-end testing, a whole range of different types of tests. And because it's JavaScript, it runs inside the browser. For anything that's a browser-based application, Cypress CI makes a lot of sense. Now, if you're building other applications that are not browser-based, then this probably would not be the tool for you. But when it comes to Drupal, this is definitely the place to be in terms of testing. Cypress runs obviously in the browser. You can run it in a headless browser or a headed browser. You can actually run those tests locally, and you can see actually the tests run on your local machine. It's really cool. It gives you a little preview window. It runs through each step, and you can see in real time which tests are successfully running or failing. You can also record your tests. So if there's a failure, you'll get like a little QuickTime movie. I don't know if QuickTime's even the right word to use anymore. I think QuickTime's dead. But and then you can play that back and see where your test broke. So that's a really cool aspect of it. And then obviously because it's JavaScript, most people that work in Drupal are going to have some JavaScript experience, likely if they're a front-end developer at least. And most back-end developers probably know JavaScript by now too. So and now I'm going to turn it over to Austen to do the next step. So I'll stop my share.
I'll start mine. So yeah, so I'm going to talk about the workflow part, and then I'll go a bit into like where the testing occurs, and then after a bit about the implementation, how we put in like the Cypress and the GitHub Actions. So first we'll start with workflow. For us, we're using GitFlow for our development, and to that point, I will mainly focus on the basic development process. So we won't worry about the hotfix branch. We'll just be looking at the master, release, develop, and any feature branches. So for the start of development, we would have we originally just had a master branch, but since we started this, from that we branched off and now have a development where all the feature branches are kind of branched off of. So if you have like a new feature for the IT website, you would do it like feature branch, ITW/3 for, our Jira tickets. So representing what we actually want to accomplish in this feature. And you branch off the development branch, as needed for all your different features. So that's where development. And then, so once you branch off, you start doing commits, you start making code changes, and then you want to eventually get done and have your proof of concept. So you've basically you've implemented your widget. You have like the first pass through ready to go through. And then at that point, you would want to merge it back into the development branch. And what that does is on the development branch, is the point where we start looking for feedback. We present this to the customer, and then they say, oh, we have the wrong results. It takes forever to load, and then you take back and you make more commits into feature. And then once that's done, you merge it back into the development branch and then get more feedback. And then this basic cycle kind of continues. So you're always going to commit to feature and then do pull request to development. And so that way you don't have to like, it's at the points that you're ready for feedback, and then you don't have to worry about what anyone else is kind of doing until that point. So after your feature is done, it's been approved, like the customer has signed off, everything looks good. We want to take all the features that we've done so far and create a release branch. Now, what this essentially does is that it gives us time to harden the release. So we say at this point, the development branch, we are not taking any more code changes, which is important. So no other like miscellaneous features that might interfere with what we already have get put into master. So it basically isolates it so that we only have this bit of code to worry about, and then we can target any bug fixes we see. We can do any deploy scripts that we might need to add in that will run, and then any other additional documentation we can put into this release branch and not have to worry about any code that's still in development, further downstream. So, and so after that is done, we of course go ahead and push that to master. Everything runs. Hopefully nothing bad happens, and we call it a day. We've deployed our 2.2 features. And then there's one step after where we then need to bring back all those changes that we did and pull it back into the development branch, so it has any of the final bug fixes and all that kind of stuff in there. So the development and the master is, at the end of the release, always kept in parallel and always at the same starting point. So you have like as close to production as possible when you start developing in a new cycle. So now I'll talk a bit about the points of testing that we have during the process. So on the feature pull requests, we into the development branch, we have automated tests are triggered, and these are, as Eric said, done by, we chose Cypress. So we have right now it configured to like whenever a pull request targets the development branch as their destination, run these tests and make sure like things don't break, and we verify that it's valid and everything kind of passes. Or if it fails, like we understand why, and like we can say, oh, this is something that happens sometimes, or we don't care too much about, like, or at least we know the reason. And at the same time, we would have it spin up tugboat instances, so that when the feature hits the development branch, a customer can go ahead and go to this URL and verify, like, oh, this color is right. I want bigger font size. It looks kind of like left aligned. So at that point, they can see something, have their playground, and give us feedback without actually touching anything that is in production currently. Is very important. So they can do whatever they want and experiment, and then make sure we hammer out the requirements. So that is when pull request goes into the development branch. Now there would be a second set of tests. Namely, these are smoke tests, which would go with more of a broad sense of like stuff that it would be, we would define as like feature breaking. So like if the login stopped working, we don't want to test that on every iteration of the feature branch. We want to test it when it gets into the release, so we can figure out what other areas that are important might be affected. So I just said login, maybe search is down, maybe there's a permissions error. We would verify that here, and then we would, instead of test with development data, we would test against the production database. So making sure that when this does go into production, it's the thing closest to it, and seeing with actual customer and live data, what is the effects of our changes. when in this release branch. And we can see that in the tugboat instance as well. So as I said before, anything past this pull request, none of the stuff still in development gets in the release and lets us focus on it. So I'll go a little bit about the implementation and how we went through it, or just how it's implemented for us. So we have the GitHub folder, we have the workflows, that's for the configuration, and then in there we define all our YAML files for each individual workflow. So here we have just a snippet of what's inside. We have the triggers. You can see the on pull request part down there. We have the job name. We have the comprising actions. These are different steps for the entire job. And then we have in there a custom build script that we run. So you can see like we set up as during the build, we get the name of the branch, set up SSH keys, check out the code, and then build, and then it continues along. So just to go in a bit about the custom build scripts, we have all these so far. It's located in the project scripts. It's in the same top level folder. And what we have currently is a thin repo, which we commit to GitHub, and it does not include everything. When you run Composer, you get all the dependencies. This is what the purpose of this build script is, and you can see it spins up MySQL. We get the Composer to run, and we do bash commands to kind of curtail it for the final product, or the final artifact, sorry, that we then push to Acquia, and then that's where kind of everything ends up living. So just a snippet or snapshot what runs in GitHub Actions. You can see that's the name of the action, the specific job that it's doing. So, and then you can see each of the parts that it runs. So it's in the build script, it's actually running all these commands. So you can see the actual output from what actually happens in the build script, and you can verify what it's doing at every step. And so that's kind of, that's where we're at currently. Improvements to come. This might be a bit dated, but yes, as Eric mentioned, the biggest thing we're looking at doing is figuring out how to do multi-site with all this. That specific set of slides was just specifically for the IT website. We're bringing in other big flagship sites in there, we have HR currently, and then we're planning to bring in another group of developers for I think student services. And so we have to kind of think about how we're going to manage multiple teams working on different websites within the same doc group using the same kind of workflow that we're doing.
Can I chime in here, Austen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was doing actually some research on this, and it does seem like GitHub Actions is very powerful. There's a pipelines process that allows you to basically, earlier he showed some slides where you can basically trigger builds based on certain branches. So we might be able to basically do where teams have a certain dev branch of their own, and then what that allows you to do is you can create a child pipeline, and then that child pipeline is basically another YAML definition, and that YAML definition includes the scripts and tests that would run for their particular build. So we might be able to use that sort of child pipeline process to build out separate tests and separate build scenarios based on which team is working in which branch, essentially. And I think that's how we might solve it. There may be other ways that we could solve it, but that's looking the most promising right now. If other people have suggestions, we'd love to hear it after the or during the Q&A. And then, oh, were we done there? And then the last thing that we wanted to do was actually integrate that visual regression testing that comes with Tugboat for free. So that's another step that we would love to work on.
So go ahead for questions.
I have some questions.
Okay.
You had talked about multi-site. Can you talk more about what you guys are trying to do and what your thoughts are and how you guys are looking at addressing that?
So to get a little bit more information about our multi-site. So our multi-site is getting to a point where we're not the only devs in there, and we are not the only website in there. So John, our manager's vision is that to have all of the mission critical websites in this multi-site right now. So we have IT, HR, then financial student services. So once student services, FAS, that's their acronym, but that's how I recognize them. So once they come in, they're a completely separate team, and they're going to be managing a completely different set of websites. But it's so there is a how are we going to interact with each other in this build process, and then so we have to figure out that point and then kind of curtail the build and the development workflow to like how we have like different teams working at different paces and merging that together. My thoughts is that, like Eric said, we would probably have like them have their own build process and targeting their own dev branch, makes sense. And then trying to isolate, like at this point, we only want to spin up their website, or we want to spin up only our website, because in terms of scalability, it doesn't make sense for if I don't care about their website for my feature, why am I spinning it up like right now and having tests run against it?
Yeah, why run the tests? It also would slow down the whole process. And actually, to kind of add to that point is we also have another D8 doc root that has some 58 or 60 websites in it. And a lot of those websites are similar, but some are not. So eventually we will want to get test coverage on those sites as well. So we all of our sites are in Acquia except for a few that are on Pantheon. So we do take advantage of multi-site for basically most things. And as these D8 projects get more and more complicated, obviously we'll need more test coverage in the long term. How do you handle configuration management within your workflow? Any updates on this? So says Mark Miller. That is a good question. We have not covered that topic yet, Mark.
Yeah,
Have you got some great ideas? We'd love to hear them, but I would say that we are a poor implementer of configuration management at this point.
The main thing that we need to tackle with is defining where configuration management starts and ends, because we allow editors a lot more, I guess, permissions, like to edit the menus, taxonomies, stuff that I think defined currently is configuration, but in menu could also be content, like whether you have a home, about, like at the top level or not. So it's that fuzzy area that we kind of need to deal with, and why we haven't done it. I have had some ideas, like maybe locking down like only developer changes overwrite whatever content changes might happen, but that's like a whole process, right? Because we've already allowed and content editors expect to do these things. Anything else?
Anyone else have questions?
You also talked about Provo CI.
Oh yeah, that was another CI tool, I believe. I know, at least I know that UC Davis was using it in the past, I believe, but it was another CI tool that essentially does the same thing that Tugboat does.
You use
Uh,
Tugboat instead of that.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
There's actually a large number of them. Um, Actually, GitLab, which is the GitHub competitor, has a preview site builder too. It would be really nice if GitHub at some point had a preview build system in the future. That would allow us to keep everything in one environment. But I think Tugboat's really nice. It's great tooling, and they do actually support. They have some features that are multi-site specific, so they're really thinking about the Drupal integration, which I think in these larger institutional enterprise things, they don't exactly think about Drupal too much. So yeah, it's great. Mm.
Um,
I'm just checking the chat here. Yeah, config management, I think we definitely need to work on.
Yeah. Ideally, I would love for it to be in code, because then at whatever point in the process, we could just have it run drush config import, and then any change that you did in development that configuration wise would just be there, and you wouldn't have to go and find out how to do it. Like whether you're in the Tugboat or in like one of the Acquia development environments.
Mhm.
yeah, there was something the Eager guys were working on. I'll have to look that up and send that to you. For hosting, you said you guys do all your hosting internally?
No, Acquia.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Acquia supports multi-site, and they're big on their multi-site platform. So
Right, right, right.
we have had some developers want a Pantheon build, so now we're allowing Pantheon builds. That's also for the word I won't mention, which is WP something. Um, yeah, but yeah, there's some websites that are not Drupal, so in those cases, Pantheon is the hosting solution there.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I guess that's it.
All right.
Thanks,
Well,
everyone.
yeah, it was a great presentation. So thank you for doing that. And yeah.
I'm glad to be here. Hopefully everyone got something out of it. Thank you.
Yeah, this is awesome. So thank you both of you guys.